Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled neighbor destroyed my property with an excavator and dug up my garden. This smug Karen built a guest house on my land and, to make matters worse, called the police on me to get me trespassed from my own property. Here is what happened. Subscribe to Ripe Stories on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. So this happened around 9 years ago when I was 26. Abbreviations for the story: OP, my name; AH, a-hole neighbor's name; RG, random guest of Airbnb. So that winter I had lost my wife to an accident and it had me spiraling down a nasty phase of depression. I am a graphic designer for a local company in my area, but after this sudden change in my life, my parents urged me to move back to my hometown. I had been offered a job there, which I had previously declined because I wanted to live close to my wife. But after losing her so suddenly, I knew a change of place was necessary. I moved to my hometown, started spending time with my parents to fight this feeling of loneliness, and even went to a therapist. By the time my contract was up, 1 year had gone by and I was in a much better place than before. I also had realized over time that even though it hurt to live in that house, I could not just abandon the place that my wife worked to build. So I packed my bags and moved back, and guess what did I find? Not my house for sure, because where was supposed to be my house was now a whole reconstructed area. There was now a frickin' pool where once was a garden that me and my wife tended to, and the whole pathway from the road to the garage was now covered in grass, and the large metal gateway to my property was replaced with a much smaller iron gate. Also, the fence that separated my property from AN's property was now gone. It did not take a genius to figure out what had happened. Me, hey! I scream as I barge in through the iron gate. A few people come out of my house much younger than me, but hopefully of legal age because I could smell the alcohol from a mile away. Who let you in here? RG, who the F are you, man? Stay back or I'm calling the police. Me, call them. You are on my property. This is my damn house. RG and his friends take a step back inside my house, clearly intimidated but also confused. I hear them whispering to each other again before the tallest one starts speaking. RG, listen, I don't know what you're talking about. We booked this place on Airbnb and it was listed as AN's guest house. Look, we even got these keys from him yesterday morning. I look at the keys and they don't seem familiar at all. How could it be anyway, since I did not leave any kind of key behind? I rub my forehead trying not to explode on these wasted young adults. Me, call AN here right now. I see RG turn back around to his friends who all seem much more awake now. RG, are you gonna call the police? Me, if you're here through Airbnb, then I will not get you involved. But this property is mine and I will call the police on AN. More whisperings and I see most of his friends run inside. I want to follow them to make sure they don't break anything, but that just seems fruitless. RG, hey, can we all move out before you call the police? I will call AN for you, but then can me and my friends go, please? Me, realizing that they are not legal enough to drink, but I could care less because too much was already happening, just call AN. RG nods and dials a number. Only a few minutes later, I hear the door to the neighbor's house open. RG gestures to the AN and turns back to his friends who are now all holding their stuff haphazardly. I don't even care as they rush off, too busy glaring at AN as I walk up to him. I can see his eyes widen as soon as he sees me, but I don't let him turn around. I take a hold of his collar and punch him right in his stupid face. Me, what did you do to my house? I'm throwing one punch after another, creating enough ruckus that I catch the attention of few of my neighbors. A couple then rushed inside, unfamiliar to me, and starts to pull me back, giving AN enough time to dial for police. Me, call them, you a-hole, I will make sure you rot in jail. I am struggling in the stronghold of this couple when I hear a familiar voice calling my name, helping me get free of the tight grip that was holding me back. I start shouting at AN and he is shouting back at me, making me want to punch him, but I knew I needed to hold back. The police arrive half an hour later. Officer, we received a call from Mr. AN. What's going on here? AN, I called you, officer. This lunatic was trespassing on my property and when I tried to stop him, he started punching me. Me raising my fists to punch this idiot. Officer, this is my property, this is my house and this is my garden. I'm returning home after a year and in this time this a-hole destroyed my property and merged it into his own. Officer, okay sir, I will listen to you. But you need to calm down first. Turns to AN, do you have documents that you own this entire plot? I could see AN sweating, but he still nods and rushes inside his house. The officer then turns to me and asks the same question. Me, all my papers were inside my house. I already know AN would have either destroyed them or hid them. And to be honest, with how he is acting, he also probably forged the documents he's gonna show. The officer gives me a suspicious look before my neighbor from before stepped forward. Neighbor, I have them. I look at my neighbor in confusion as the officer asks him to continue. Neighbor, I've been living here for 3 years now, since OP and his wife moved in. Last year, after he moved out, I started excavating his garden and reconstructing the entire place. I thought maybe he was gone for good and sold his property, but then one day when I was taking out the trash, I found a bundle of files near the dumpster outside. I would have ignored it, but then I saw OP and his wife's name on it. The document was legalizing their documents. I feel myself boiling with rage. This idiot had thrown out my marriage certificate. I turned to look at the neighbor, who gave me a sympathetic look before turning back to the officer. Neighbor, I found that suspicious and I started digging up the files. Amidst them, I found the document for this land and even other things like electricity bills and whatnot. Officer, do you still have them? Neighbor, yes, I even have pictures of when AN was reconstructing everything. I even tried contacting OP, but I could not reach him. Me, I changed my number after moving. God, I knew it was a bad idea. Officer notes everything down. If you have the evidence, then the case should not be difficult. We turn back, and when AN finally comes out, documents held tightly in his hands. Officer takes them and looks them over before telling AN that he will try his best to protect the true owner's rights. AN then starts smiling all smug, not noticing the small gesture this officer sent to his partner. I watch with a satisfied smirk as this idiot is pinned to the ground and handcuffed. The officer tells him that this was the sloppiest case of forgery he had ever seen, and I laugh as AN turns 10 shades of red. Officer, but no matter how straightforward this case seems, I still need the original documents. Until that is resolved, I will have to restrict this property. I not feeling solemn that I could not even get in my own house, but then my neighbor pats me on the back. Neighbor, you can stay with me until then. Apparently my neighbor also felt guilty for not being able to inform me about everything that was happening to my property. I can't blame him though, I had left so abruptly without any information, but luckily he still looked out for me, and after a week of compromising with the police, I finally got to enter my house again. AN was charged with document forgery, private property destruction, and illegal building. It all cumulated into a hefty $300,000 fine that he had to pay me within 18 months. With that, I was able to restore my house back to how it once was, redesigning my garden completely and even dedicating a patch to my wife where I grew her favorite flowers. And by the way, Ripe Stars, for this story I was actually super curious where it took place, because I thought the way the police handled this case, there is no way that this happened in a Western country. So I actually private messaged the OP of this story, and he told me that this story actually took place in Malaysia. Which, as you should know, is a country in Southeast Asia. But anyway, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to like the video, as that would help me tremendously. The next one is titled Karen in a Bakery. So some backstory, I work in a mom and pop style bakery. It's a family owned business and our bakers come in at 2:30 every morning to make all our donuts from scratch. We are known for having great gourmet donuts, as well as some experimental ones that are not advertised on our Facebook page. The way we work is first come first serve. If a customer wants a specific type of donut or pastry, they either have to call 24 hours ahead of time to place an order, or they can call the same day. If we have the donuts they want same day, we can box them and set them aside for pickup. Otherwise, we have no obligation to save donuts for anyone, even if they are a regular customer. So last week I was closing with a newer employee, and I was responsible for training her on how to close. And it is getting dangerously close to Halloween, our busiest season, as we sell special Halloween cookies. We were extremely busy and I was behind on my closing task. We close at 5 PM on most weekdays, and it was about 4:45 and we still had most of our closing tasks to finish. In comes Karen, luckily to an empty lobby, or this would have been much worse. Karen promptly informed us that this was her first time in the bakery and she had driven about 2 hours to get there. She said she saw our pumpkin donuts on Facebook and wanted some. We informed her that we had sold out a couple hours prior, and Karen then said, "Well, can't the bakers just make more?" Me, the bakers are not here anymore. They come in around 2:30 AM in the morning to make donuts and go to bed around 7 PM, so they don't like to be here until closing. Karen, that's a shame. I came all the way here from XYZ. Me, sorry about that. I then hand her a business card with our hours and said, you can call ahead anytime to order whatever you want and we can also ship out of state. Karen, that doesn't help me now. Me, I'm sorry about that. Our donuts are just first come first served. We can never guarantee our stock unless you call ahead. However, is there anything that we have here that looks good for you maybe? Keep in mind that we still have plenty of donuts filling 2 full cases, the equivalent of about 15 9x26 pans full of goods. Karen, how much is a dozen? Me, it's $9 for a standard dozen, but we have some donuts that are a slight upcharge. Those are the ones that are more complicated and take more ingredients or are otherwise larger donuts. And by the way, I can point those out to you as you are choosing if you would like. Karen, $9 is too much. Me, unsure what to say because I sell the donuts lady, not set the prices. Karen, fine. I guess I will just take a dozen. Coworker and I begin boxing the donuts that she chooses. We point out which donuts are upcharged as she chooses them. She then points to one of our gourmet donuts, a specialty chocolate version of our most popular seller. We only offer it 1 day a week. Karen, what if I want a dozen of these? Gestures to the chocolate donuts. Coworker, those are $10 a dozen. Karen, I thought you said $9. Why the extra $1? They are made the exact same way. Coworker, I don't know, My coworker is stammering. She hasn't been here long enough to know how things work, so I decide to step in and defuse the situation. Me, they are more expensive because they take extra ingredients and more time to prepare than our standard ones. Therefore, they are upcharged. Karen, that's ridiculous. I choose to ignore Karen and ring up her total. She chose a dozen, but half of those were specialty donuts and large pastries, therefore adding $4 to her standard $9 dozen. I then tell her the price, she scoffs loudly and then laughs in my face. Karen, that's crazy. I thought you told me it would be $9. Me, yes, but I also told you that some are upcharged. Karen, not that much of an upcharge. Me, well, half of your dozen were more expensive donuts. I go over to her box and point out the price of each individual donut she picked, clarifying which ones were higher priced specifically. Karen, but can I get a dozen of these? Points to our most popular seller, for $9? Me, yes. Karen, well, I wish you would have told me that. I would have gotten those instead. I can see the wheels in Karen's head turning. She's about to ask us that she's changed her mind and wants a different dozen. Meaning we have to take all dozen of her donuts out of the box and place them back on the trays. This does not sound too hard. However, donuts are delicate and handling them more than necessary equals smudged icing, squished dough and glove prints on the glaze, which makes it less appealing to other customers. Plus this means that we have to throw that box away as we cannot reuse it for another customer per protocol. My coworker could see I was shaking. She mouthed, I will get this, and I stepped into the kitchen to take a breather. I'm not kidding when I say that Karen spent well over a half an hour choosing donuts and arguing with us about the prices. She asked if we had any sales going on. She said we didn't, so she asked if we could cut her specifically a discount since she drove so far to get here. I said no. Coworker and I spent the next 30 to 45 minutes handling Karen in shifts, each taking turns to argue and do our closing task. It is now past closing. We have to lock the door while Karen is still arguing because we cannot let any more customers in after hours. Karen resorts one more time to commenting that all donuts are made the same way and therefore should not be upcharged. I repeat again, ma'am, I'm sorry but I cannot change the price. Some of them take double the time to rise and bake. Some even take several specialty ingredients that are not available in bulk. That all comes out of pocket. Our bakers come in before dawn and work really hard to make these donuts from scratch and therefore price them appropriately based on labor and ingredients costs. That's just how it works here. Karen did not like that answer but seemed to be getting just as tired of the situation as we were. Angrily she pays for her donuts and walks out, but not before getting the last word in. It is just a shame that I drove all this way for you to be out of those pumpkin donuts, but it's whatever. Then she closes the door and coworker and I let out the biggest breath simultaneously. The real kicker here is that Karen walked out with $30 worth of donuts. She did not ask us to unbox her original dozen. Instead, she added another dozen plus more on top of her order. Obviously, money was not an issue after all. I wish this story had more of a gut-punching ending, but sadly it doesn't. Karen walked out still thinking it's okay to bully cashiers. But what blows my mind the most is how people like this have no concept of how a business works. If a business offers any kind of goods, how do you think they get those goods? We sure as hell don't bake our own money. If that were the case, then sure, you can get donuts for 15 cents a piece like you did in the 1930s. And the next one is titled Super Noisy Crazy Neighbor. So this was a few years ago when I was 23 male. I had a very old and possibly hallucinating neighbor that would bang on my wall when I was not even doing anything, constantly waking me up. I would yell back, "I'm sleeping, I'm damn sleeping." Bang, bang, bang. I tried everything, including knocking on his door and calling him. He refused to communicate, he just knocked on the wall and reported me to management for moving furniture. I was asleep. What a total idiot move. Cops got called, but I didn't do it. They saw a 23-year-old kid and were like, "Sure buddy, turn the music down." I had to prove it. I went out of town but set up a Ring camera in my room. They were on sale for like $70 and I was planning on returning it. Whenever he knocked, I had the footage. I then asked my roommate to document the cops being there as well. He set up a corner for his phone and answered the door. "Hey guys, this neighbor is hearing things. OP is not even in LA. Sorry, the tables had turned." Management was at this point telling him to stop calling the cops, but he did not comply. They started showing up every day, even when I was not home. I left notes on the door saying that he's crazy. I found emails. I nearly found a new place, but no, let's get petty. I arrived home with some giant speakers, like massive ones. I put them right up against a wall and cued the USSR national anthem. He was old, so my thought was, he probably hates this. I plugged in a mic as well. I'm a musician, so I have several lying around. I turned it up to 12 past 11. I was so excited, it was 8 PM. I just had to wait. Bang, bang, bang. Did not have to wait. My ears were distorting. The mic fed back, the noise was insane. For a moment there, the musings of Sergei Mikhalkov converted us all to communism. I stopped the music and screamed, "I was not making any noise, but I am now. Stop waking me up, douchebag." No response of course, but he called one more time a few days later, but I was here for the cops this time and showed them the Ring video and said that he was harassing me. I don't know what happened with the cops that night, but he stopped after that. And the next one is titled, "Insult your head closer instead of give a raise?" Yeah, sure, there's no way that will backfire. In the late 90s, I worked at a Subway restaurant, specifically closing shift. That will be relevant later. At the time I was paid somewhere between $7 and $8 an hour. A good chunk more than minimum wage and had me bringing my A game every day. I knew it was just fast food, but I took pride in my work. I showed up early, always covered when people called in, followed the recipes, even the really anal stuff like 2 slices of black olive per 6-inch sub, unless the customer specifically requests more, etc. By all accounts, I was a model employee. Plus, since I worked alone, I was the de facto shift supervisor. That's gotta be worth something. I figured I would ask the regional manager for a raise. Store manager did not have the authority. The worst he can do is say no, right? Wrong. Turns out the worst he can do is insult me and everyone else that works there. He was in one day and I made my pitch. He just went off on me, raising his voice shy of a full yell and saying something like, "If you were worth more, you wouldn't be working here. You are replaceable and now go away and don't ever speak to me again. I'm the regional manager and I'm actually important. You just make sandwiches and scrub toilets." Again, not the exact words, but he did make those points quite clearly. I remember being shocked into silence at such a cartoonish display of arrogance coming out of a balding, middle-aged man. The first time I'd ever encountered such a douchebag. I did not even specify an amount, I just asked for a raise. He could have given me a nickel or even made up something like, "I'm sorry, wages are set by corporate, I cannot do it." And while I would have been disappointed, I would have accepted it. But no, his response to the very concept of any raise was a pretentious, self-righteous indictment against the value of every Subway employee that was not management. Or probably him specifically. I had genuinely enjoyed working there right up until that watershed moment. Okay dude, if that's how you want it, fine. I will get mine one way or another. I take pride in my work, but 7 something an hour is not enough to endanger any further loyalty after you so flippantly insulted me and everyone working for you. Up until that point, I had been meticulous about everything I did at work. Like I mentioned earlier, closing shift was a one-man show, which meant I had no supervision. My effectiveness was judged based on the accuracy of my inventory numbers, counting my till, my clock out times and whether everything was in order when the openers arrived in the morning. I knew a few tricks to offset inventory, which allowed me to take home food without it being noticed. Ring up a small soda as a cheese round since they were both 89 cents, etc. On a good night I would take home a dozen or more foot-long subs. On a bad night I would just make sandwiches with the loaf of bread I brought from home. I'd also bring in a bunch of empty bottles or jugs and fill them from the fountain after clocking out. I would dump entire Cambros full of meat, veggies and cheese into a bag to take home. Sometimes I would bake an oven full of cookies with the express purpose of taking them if I could do so without using up the rest of a box, because a box with one raw cookie was counted the same as an unopened box. The moment he made it clear what I was worth to him, I started looking for a different job. If he had given me a token 3% cost of living increase, it would have amounted to maybe 25 cents per hour. They had me working around 30 to 35 hours a week, just below full time, so it would have amounted to under $9 a week. Hell, he could have even offered a sincere apology and no raise, and I would have kept on with it. Instead, for the last few months I worked there, every single night I took home what probably amounted to a couple $100 worth of potential sales every single night. At the time, my friends and I, being late teens or early 20s, were still in the party phase of our lives. So, every night I worked for those last months, I would roll up just as the party was getting wild with a bunch of sandwiches, cookies, gallons of soda, etc. Those few months doing the bare minimum and sponging off that dead-end job were way more satisfying than giving my all for 7 and change for an insufferable bag of septic slop.